Have you ever wondered what happens to a bite of food after you swallow it? It doesn't just disappear, it travels through a long path called the digestive system. Along this journey, different organs work like machines to break your meal into tiny nutrients your body can use, and to discard the waste. We'll follow a piece of food step by step, from the moment it enters your mouth all the way through to when it leaves your body. Watch our bite become a soft, squishy ball called a bolus. Your tongue nudges it into position and saliva keeps everything slippery so it can travel safely. In just a moment, that bolus will head toward the throat to begin its big journey through the digestive system. The journey begins in your mouth. Your teeth act like scissors and crushers, chipping and grinding food into smaller pieces. Meanwhile, your tongue pushes the food around and helps form it into a soft lump. Saliva, your spit, mixes in as well. It moistens the food and even contains special enzymes, tiny chemical helpers, that begin breaking down the food. Think of saliva like a sauce that starts the digestion process. Once the food is chewed and moistened, it's ready to be swallowed. When you swallow, a little flap in your throat, called the epiglottis, flips down to cover your windpipe so the food goes into the esophagus, not your lungs. Before we swallow, taste buds send flavor messages to the brain: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and umami. Saliva's enzyme amylase begins snipping long starches into smaller sugars. The tongue shapes the bolus like a tiny package, checking that it's moist and smooth. When everything's ready, the swallowing reflex prepares to pass the food safely downward. Next, the food enters the esophagus, a muscular tube about 25 cm long that connects your throat to your stomach. You can imagine it like a flexible water slide for food. Muscles in the esophagus squeeze in wave-like motions, called peristalsis, that gently push the food down toward the stomach. It's almost like squeezing toothpaste out of a tube or pushing a toy down a slide. This whole process takes just a few seconds, and then our meal lands in the stomach. At the lower end of the esophagus sits a circular muscle gate called the sphincter. It opens to let food into the stomach, then closes to keep acid from splashing back up. Gravity helps, but peristalsis can move food even when you're upside down. Your muscles do the work. The stomach is a stretchy, muscular bag that acts like a powerful blender. When food enters, the stomach lining releases strong digestive juices and acid that continue breaking down the food. This acid is so strong it can kill most of the bacteria in your food. Meanwhile, the stomach's muscles churn and squash the food, mixing it thoroughly with the juices until it turns into a sloppy, soupy mixture, often called chyme. You can think of the stomach like a cement mixer or a blender that turns your food into a liquidy soup. Once the food is well mixed and soupy, the stomach slowly sends it into the small intestine in small squirts. The next stop is the small intestine. Despite its name, the small intestine is very long, about 6.5 meters in an adult, but only a few centimeters wide. The small intestine has three parts: duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Here, juices from the pancreas and bile mix with the food soup, preparing nutrients to be absorbed by the finger-like villi lining the wall. Imagine a very long tube in a tiny space. It's kind of like a winding garden hose. The key job of the small intestine is to absorb nutrients from the food. Its walls are lined with millions of tiny, finger-like projections, like a velvet carpet, that soak up nutrients. As the food soup passes through, these tiny fingers absorb vitamins, sugars, proteins, and other goodies into the bloodstream. You can think of the small intestine like a giant sponge or towel that soaks up all the good stuff from your food. By the time food leaves the small intestine, most of its nutrients have been absorbed into your body. As the chyme moves along, tiny villi and microvilli grab vitamins, minerals, sugars, and amino acids. What remains becomes a watery mixture. It passes through the ileocecal valve, the doorway, where the small intestine hands off to the large intestine. What's left is mostly water and waste. This then enters the large intestine, also called the colon. The large intestine is wider but shorter, around 1.5 meters long, compared to the small intestine. Its main job is to absorb water, salts, and some vitamins from the leftovers. Think of it like a drying machine or a sponge squeezing out water from clothes. As the large intestine soaks up water, the waste becomes more solid. This solid waste is eventually called stool, or poop. The waste travels to the rectum, and when the time is right, it leaves your body through the anus. In summary, the large intestine turns what's left of the food into a solid waste by absorbing the remaining water. Inside the large intestine, lives a busy community of helpful bacteria called the gut microbiome. They munch on leftovers to produce vitamins like K and some B vitamins, and they also make gases. That's where burps and farts come from. Water keeps getting absorbed so the waste firms up. Finally, the rectum stores the stool and signals your brain when it's time to go. We've covered the main tube, but there are extra organs that help with digestion too. The liver is a large, busy organ, the body's largest internal organ, that acts like a chemical processing factory. The liver ships bile to the gallbladder for storage. Bile is a yellow-green mix of salts that break big fat globs into tiny droplets. When a fatty meal arrives, the gallbladder squeezes and bile flows through thin ducts into the small intestine to help digest those fats. It receives blood-carrying nutrients from the small intestine and decides what to do with them. The liver cleans toxins out of the blood, recycles old cells, and also makes bile, a fluid that helps break down fats. The bile made by the liver is stored in the gallbladder, a small, greenish pouch under the liver. When fatty food enters the small intestine, the gallbladder squeezes out bile into the small intestine to help dissolve and absorb those fats. You can think of bile like dish soap for food fats. It makes fats break into tiny droplets so the body can digest them easily. Another helper is the pancreas, a fist-sized gland tucked behind the stomach. The pancreas makes special digestive enzymes, chemical helpers, and delivers them into the small intestine. These enzymes break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates so your body can absorb them. In addition, the pancreas makes insulin, a hormone that helps control the sugar, glucose level in your blood. You might imagine the pancreas as a kind of kitchen chef or factory. It pours in the right chemicals at the right time to finish breaking down your meal, and it keeps your energy, sugar levels balanced. Let's recap our journey. First, food is chewed and mixed with saliva in the mouth. Then it slides down the esophagus into the stomach, where acid and muscle action turn it into a nutrient-packed soup. Next, the soup moves through the long small intestine where nutrients are absorbed into the body. The leftovers then pass to the large intestine, where water is absorbed and the rest becomes waste to be eliminated. Along the way, the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas help by cleaning, producing bile, and adding digestive enzymes. Fun fact, your entire digestive system is about 9 meters long. That's longer than a car. And it takes roughly 24 hours for one meal to travel from start to finish. Even more amazing, the acid in your stomach is so powerful it could dissolve metal, which is why your stomach needs a special lining to protect itself. Now when you eat, you can imagine the awesome journey your food is taking inside you. Roll out the tape. 9 meters. That's the full length of your food's epic journey. Now, check the height. Stack about 5 grown-ups end to end. Stack about 6 grown-ups end to end. This is how tall it can be. And this is how long. Next, line up the wheels. Cars, bumper to bumper. Wow! It is so much longer than a car. Around 2 cars. All that distance, neatly packed inside you. Your body is amazing. What will your next bite explore?